The morning wind whipped in sharp gusts, cutting through his coat and making Michael Bennett instinctively draw his neck back. He stood still in front of Grayson's Market, the ninth branch in a chain of 18 stores bearing the name of its founder, who was none other than himself. The familiar red and white sign still hung bright, just as it was on the first day he personally designed it. But today, the light from it no longer warmed his heart. Beneath it, a large banner read, "Highest grossing store in the region." A badge of pride that, just a few years ago, would have filled him with satisfaction. Yet somehow this morning it made his stomach tighten. Lately, a flood of negative feedback has been pouring into headquarters. Customers complained about employee attitudes, messy shelves, and a lifeless atmosphere. But what kept Michael awake at night was an anonymous letter. "You built an empire on justice and respect, but right at the flagpole you raised, your employees are being suffocated." The regional management insisted these were isolated gripes from a few lazy staff members. But Michael didn't buy it. If there's one lesson he'd learned in nearly 2 decades of running a business, it's this: when employees fall silent and something has already died. Today he wasn't here as a CEO. No tie, no files, no assistant. Just a middle-aged man in a faded jacket and a baseball cap, walking into the store like a jobless applicant. The glass door swung open, the familiar, sharp ding of the bell rang out, but no one looked up to greet him. At the cashier counter on the left, a young woman was hunched over, checking the scanner. Her hair was hastily tied with a worn-out elastic band, her eyes slightly swollen as if she had just been crying. The name tag on her chest clearly read, Linda. Michael pretended to examine a nearby shelf. A stack of instant noodles had toppled over and still hadn't been straightened. From the corner of his eye, he saw Linda look up and give a strained smile to an elderly customer waiting to pay. Her voice trembled, nearly breaking. "I'm sorry for keeping you waiting." The older woman gently patted her hand. "It's all right, dear. Take your time." But when the customer left, Linda didn't head back to the break room. She braced herself against the counter, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath as though fighting back something that had cracked open inside. Michael clenched his fists, though his face remained expressionless. Just seconds later, a cold voice snapped through the quiet air like a whip. "Linda!" A tall man in a black vest emerged from the back office, his eyes razor sharp. "How many times have I told you no crying at the register?" It was Brian Keller, the manager of this branch, looking at her as if she were a system error. I'm fine." Linda lowered her head, quickly wiping the lingering tear from her cheek. "It's just some family stuff. I'll be okay." "Yeah, better be. You've already taken 2 days off this month. Don't think I won't cut your shifts." Brian leaned in closer, his voice lowering but laced with threat. "Nobody gets special treatment just because their kid is sick." Linda said nothing more, only nodded faintly. Michael turned away, pretending to adjust his cap, but his hand in his pocket turned white from the tension. He couldn't intervene, offhand. Not yet, but it was clear that something here was rotting more deeply than he had imagined. He continued observing in silence for the next few hours. A young employee named Jamal was assigned to show him how to scan items. The boy was enthusiastic and patient, but his eyes kept flicking toward Linda as if he was worried about something. Michael noticed Linda didn't engage with anyone, avoided eye contact for more than 2 seconds, never took more than a minute's rest. She was like an automated machine, programmed to make no mistakes, to show no emotion. Every smile she forced carried a trace of tears that hadn't fully dried. At lunchtime, Michael walked toward the break room at the end of the aisle. The lights were dim, the vending machine clinked as a soda can dropped. But what made him freeze was a soft swoop leaking through the slightly ajar door. "I can't take it anymore." Linda's voice broke. "I asked for extra shifts, worked weekends, but I still can't pay for gas. Last week I had to borrow money just to make rent. My son's been coughing all night, and I'm afraid to take him to the hospital because I don't have money for medicine." Another woman's voice, gentler, replied, "You don't deserve to be treated like this. Brian is seriously crossing the line. He said I'm unreliable just because I missed work to care for my son. But he has asthma. He almost had to be hospitalized. Why do I have to apologize for being a mother? Her voice rose, then cracked. Why do people assume we're lazy when we're just trying to survive? Michael stepped back, leaning against the wall nearby. His heart pounded in his chest. He used to think he understood every corner of this system. But now, in front of him, it was an underground world, where the vulnerable had to choose between family and their job, between silence and survival. That afternoon, Linda left work early. Michael stood beside the bread shelf, pretending to rearrange packages, but never took his eyes off her. She walked slowly across the parking lot, clutching a faded fabric tote. She opened her wallet and poured a few coins into her palm, too little to fill a tank. A moment later, she slumped forward against the steering wheel, her shoulders trembling. Michael stood a few meters away. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't approach her, couldn't say a word, because he wasn't the CEO right now. He was just a new hire standing in the shadows, witnessing a truth he had nearly forgotten. The truth is, Linda, a hardworking employee, a resilient mother, being pushed to the edge of endurance. And Michael knew the real journey of being a CEO would begin with that very tear. The next morning, Michael returned to the store very early. The sun had not yet risen, and a thin layer of mist clung to the front glass. He arrived before everyone, except one person, Linda. She was kneeling, scrubbing a stain off the floor near the produce section, her uniform soaked, hands red from the cold. No one had asked her to do it. No one saw it. But she did it anyway, as if it were a reflex born of habit. Michael entered through the side door, pretending not to notice her. A pang of guilt crept into the pit of his heart. The kind of guilt felt by a man who held all the power in his hands, yet watched others struggle against problems born from the very system he had built. As the other employees began their shifts, the space grew more crowded, but no warmer. Everyone stayed quiet, avoided eye contact, as if speaking first meant being targeted. Jamal, the young man from yesterday, greeted Michael briefly while quickly shoving a pen into his pocket, then turned away. "Don't let Brian catch you with nothing in your hands," he muttered. That remark, though casually delivered, sent a chill down Michael's spine. This was how employees survived here, through silence, through evasion. There was no concept of team, only individuals shielding themselves from the power that threatened to drown them. By 9 a.m., the store was busy. Linda was at register 2, still the same, a smile that never reached her eyes. A customer, a young mother with a 3-year-old, was trying to pay while the child thrashed about, demanding candy. Linda crouched down and handed the child a superhero sticker from a drawer. The boy stopped crying. The mother smiled in gratitude, but the moment didn't last long. Brian appeared. Emerging from the back office, he swept into the space like a cold gust. His eyes locked straight on Linda. "Why is register 2 moving so slow?" "Linda, this isn't a playground for handing out stickers." His voice rang out sharp, loud enough for both customers and employees nearby to hear clearly. Linda straightened, eyes widening slightly in surprise. "I'm sorry, the customer just—" "I don't need your apology," Brian cut her off, stepping up to the register. "I need you to work, not give out gifts, not fish for sympathy. You're slowing down the line." The child clung to his mother's hand, shrinking behind her. The mother stepped back, visibly uncomfortable. Linda bowed her head, gave a small nod, and said nothing. But Michael could see it clearly. Her hand gripping the scanner was turning pale from the tension. "One more time," Brian said, his voice lower but loaded with implication, "and I'll move you to true part-time, 12 hours a week, and trust me, plenty of people are lining up to take your spot." Michael remained silent, hands in his pockets, standing on a shelf 10 paces away. His heart pounded. The blatant humiliation in front of customers wasn't just wrong, it was legalized cruelty disguised as performance management. The young mother left quickly, saying nothing. Linda kept her head down and processed the next customer, but Michael saw it. Her hands trembled as she pressed the buttons, lips clenched tightly to keep from breaking down. This can't go on, Michael told himself. But he knew. He couldn't reveal himself yet. He needed proof, needed to see the full extent. Any words from an ordinary employee would be dismissed, but if the CEO spoke, his voice had to carry weight. That afternoon, when Brian stepped out to take a call, Michael approached Jamal at the register, using the excuse of asking about promo code procedures, but his voice dropped low. "How's Linda holding up?" Jamal glanced around, then whispered, "Not good. Brian's pushing her out. She used to be full-time, but ever since she took few shifts off for her sick kid, he's been cutting her hours nonstop." "Anyone else being treated like this?" Michael asked. Jamal hesitated, then nodded. "Anyone with young kids, or who's taking night classes, or working a second job, if they ask to switch shifts, it's like digging their own grave." Michael clenched his jaw. He knew he had to confront this, but not with emotion alone. He needed evidence, a clear reason to strike, without hesitation. After his shift, he volunteered to stay late and help clean the stockroom, claiming he needed extra money. The night shift manager nodded without suspicion, and thanks to that, when Brian left the store at the end of the shift, Michael slipped into the office. Under the dim lights, he turned on the computer and logged into the scheduling system. The screen flashed. "Access granted." Michael scrolled down. The first name was Linda Shaw. The data hit him like a slap. From 38 hours last week down to 14 in under a month. No reason, no infractions, no notes. Just a series of canceled shifts, changed assignments, and vanished hours. And Linda wasn't the only one. Below her was Alicia, a single mom. Greg, attending night school. They all had one thing in common. They didn't submit unconditionally. Michael leaned back in the chair, head tilted toward the ceiling. His throat felt parched. This wasn't just poor management. This was manipulation, cutting hours as a form of punishment. And Brian had turned an entire store into a chessboard of control. That night, Michael didn't go home right away. He sat in his car in the parking lot for hours just thinking. Linda's eyes burned in his memory, a mix of resilience and despair. Jamal's voice echoed, "If they ask to switch shifts, it's like digging their own grave." And the numbers, cold, emotionless, but never lying. He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. The line picked up instantly. "Sophie," he said, "cancel all my meetings tomorrow." "Is something wrong, sir?" His assistant's voice was filled with concern. "I have something I need to handle, personally." Michael ended the call, resting his head on the steering wheel, eyes closed. Tomorrow, he will no longer return as a new hire. He would come back as himself. Like the man who created this chain of stores, and who would no longer let it become a trap that exploited human lives. Grayson's Market opened its doors to customers like every other day. But this morning, every movement inside seemed to beat slower. No one could say why, but the atmosphere felt different. Nobody noticed the well-dressed man in a sharp suit walking through the front door until a few whispers began to ripple, and some eyes darted sideways at the small metal nameplate gleaming on his lapel. Michael Bennett, Chief Executive Officer. Michael didn't stop at the front counter, nor did he head straight to the manager's office as usual. Instead, he walked slowly down the aisles, his eyes lingering on each untidy shelf, on every dented box left astray. He recorded each detail in his mind. But today wasn't about evaluating store standards. He was looking for Linda. Not seeing her at the register, Michael headed toward the staff break room. The wooden door was shut, a sign reading "Staff Only" taped to the outside. He knocked softly. No response. But through the crack beneath the door, he heard it. Someone quietly sobbing. The sound was faint but unmistakable. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped back and leaned gently against the opposite wall, like a man just waiting by chance. Inside, Linda's voice trembled and broke through the air. "I don't know what else to do. I tried. I really tried my best." Another voice, softer, smaller, answered. It was Alicia, a night shift employee. "I know. You've worked double what others did, and they still cut your hours. We all see it. Bryant, he's doing it on purpose." Linda let out a short laugh, but it sounded more painful than amused. "He says I'm unreliable because I missed 2 shifts. But my kid, he had an asthma attack. I couldn't leave him home alone. Her voice cracked. And they cut my hours again this week. I'm down to 12. Rent's due this week, and I don't even have enough for gas to get to work. If I can't figure something out, I'll have to quit. Michael closed his eyes. He once thought he understood the harshness of retail, but he had never imagined that within the very system he built, a mother would be forced to choose between feeding her child and clinging to a job that was strangling her, hour by hour. I feel so ashamed, Alicia. Linda's voice softened, as if she was speaking just to get the words out. I go to work like I'm invisible. Smile when I have to, stay silent when I'm scolded. They don't see me as a person anymore. Alicia responded, her voice thick with emotion. But you still come in every day. Still stand at your register. Still don't give up. They may not see it, but we do. You're the strongest person here. A chair scraped lightly. Michael could hear the tear of a tissue, someone wiping their eyes. The space fell into silence for a few seconds. Then Linda whispered, barely audible, if someone knew about this, if someone had the power to stop it. That was the moment Michael stepped away from the hall, heart pounding. Enough. He didn't need to hear another word to understand. This wasn't just about an employee being treated unfairly. It was about a moral breakdown at the root, where kindness was seen as weakness and cruelty praised as efficiency. He walked back to the front office where Brian sat at the reception desk, smiling and chatting with a customer. The manager still wore his usual confident expression, as though everything was under control. But Michael had changed. He was no longer a passive observer. He was the man who was about to act. Entering the office, Michael shut the door behind him and sat down across from Brian without a word of warning. Brian looked up, eyebrows slightly furrowed but still polite. Mr. Bennett, I didn't know you were visiting today. Is there something I can assist you with? Michael didn't respond right away. He studied the man across from him, a man who could smile while slashing someone's hours without blinking. Then he opened his laptop, placed it on the desk, and turned the screen toward Brian. You know who I am. I know who you are. Now explain this. On the screen was a report of slashed work hours, Linda's and several others. The numbers spoke for themselves. Brian's face shifted. Confidence turned into defense. I'm just doing what's best for the store. Those employees constantly request shift changes, call in last minute. I can't let personal problems disrupt the business. You're calling a child being hospitalized a personal problem? Michael's voice dropped low, but each word was sharp. You didn't report the incidents. You didn't assess performance. You systematically cut hours. You turned policy into punishment. Brian tried to keep calm. Mr. Bennett, this is business. I have to prioritize performance. Since I restructured the shifts, costs have gone down, profits are up. I got an email from finance praising the numbers just last week. Michael let out a laugh, but there was no joy in it. Profits are up, and Linda's son is stuck at home because his mom can't afford gas. That's what you're calling an achievement? There was nothing more to say. Michael stood up, pulled the employee badge with the CEO tag from his pocket, and placed it on the desk. You're fired, effective immediately. Brian paled. What? You can't? I can, and I just did. He opened the door and stepped out, met with stunned silence from every employee who'd seen him enter. Linda was at the register, still trying to smile through the fatigue in her eyes as she rang up another customer. Michael walked to the center of the floor, where every eye turned toward him. I'm Michael Bennett, CEO of Grayson's Market, and I have seen and heard enough. The store went completely silent, but inside Linda's chest, for the first time in a long while, her heart began to beat not in fear, but in hope. Today, she wasn't standing alone anymore. Michael sat alone in the old manager's office, the swivel chair still holding the warmth of the man who had just left. The scent of coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the smell of printer ink. A familiar blend he knew all too well, stagnation disguised as efficient management. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching the dowdy roster on the desk, a chaotic mess of scribbled notes, crossouts, and last-minute changes. Evidence of arbitrariness. guided by nothing but impulse and power. He flipped through the schedule for the current week. Linda's name appeared sporadically, each time just 3 or 4 hours, squeezed between long shifts assigned to Brian's favorites. Several other employees, a single mom here, a college night student there, had been relegated to awkward hours or cut midweek with a simple note, not suitable. Meanwhile, a few names had schedules so packed they had no days off at all. Michael quickly saw the pattern. The quieter and more obedient the employee, the more favorable the shifts. He pulled out his notebook and wrote the first line. Shift schedules used as reward/punishment tool. Revoke all local manager scheduling privileges. The door creaked open. Jamal peeked in hesitant. Mr. Michael, people are whispering. They don't believe you're really the CEO. Michael motioned him in. Sit down. I need you to be honest. Jamal sat, still visibly stunned. You're really the guy running the whole chain? Michael nodded. I came because I heard there was a problem. Now I know I came at the right time. Tell me everything. From the beginning. Jamal swallowed. Honestly, we all know how to survive here. Brian likes to control through scheduling. If someone talks back, they get night shifts or lose weekends. Some dropped out of school. Some quit. But who dares to fight it? We all sign into flexible hour contracts. Michael nodded, jotting down, flexible contracts exploited to avoid accountability. Then he looked Jamal straight in the eye. Have you ever seen Linda being threatened? Jamal bit his lip. Many times I wanted to step in, but Brian had this way of looking at you that shut you up. Linda's strong, really, but I think she's breaking. Michael closed his eyes. What he suspected was now confirmed. He stood up and closed his notebook. Thank you, Jamal. You're a man of conscience. Leaving the office, Michael walked straight to Register 2, where Linda was, as usual. She flinched slightly when she saw him. There was no forced smile this time, just an empty gaze, the look of someone who'd hoped and stopped hoping too many times. He said nothing, just nodded gently, signaling, I've seen. That afternoon, Michael gathered all the store employees for a meeting. The small break room was packed. Everyone was quiet. No one knew what would happen after Brian's departure. Some still didn't believe it. A few stood near the walls, ready to retreat if anything went wrong. Michael stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. I know the past few weeks here haven't been easy. I know some of you have been treated unfairly, and I want you to know, as of today, that stops. A soft murmur rose, then fell again. Anyone who had hours cut without a clear reason will be reimbursed. Anyone forced into exhausting shifts without support will have another schedule reviewed. And from today on, shift assignments will be handled by the central department. No more personal discretion. Linda sat quietly in the corner. Her expression was unreadable, as if she were trying to keep a wave in her chest from crashing. Michael turned toward her, speaking slowly. Linda, I know what you've been through, and I'm sorry. The room fell silent. Linda didn't move, but her eyes blinked just once, and a flicker of red broke through the white. You're not just a great employee, you're a leader. You held this store together while being pushed to the edge. And if you're willing, I'd like to offer you the role of assistant manager. Linda looked up. She looked at him, then at everyone else. A brief silence passed, then her lips moved. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Michael replied. You've already proven it. The room erupted in applause, part surprise, part emotion. Some employees stood and nodded. Alicia gently patted Linda's shoulder from behind. Jamal grinned, nod. She's the right one. Linda remained seated, but this time her eyes glistened with a different emotion. Not anger, not fear, not exhaustion. Relief, a long overdue recognition, strong enough to restore a person who had nearly fallen apart. After the meeting, Michael didn't leave right away. He walked through the store, glancing at the merchandise, watching the staff. Something had shifted, not just on the surface, but in the air. The energy felt lighter, less guarded, less cold. When he reached Register 2, he saw Linda showing a new employee how to process a discount code. Her hands moved quickly, and she was actually smiling a real smile, unhidden. The young staff member nodded eagerly, clearly impressed. Michael said nothing. He stood for a few seconds, then turned to leave. Just before exiting the store, he looked back. Linda met his gaze and gave a slight nod. No words needed. In her eyes, he read two simple words. I'm back. This morning, Grayson's market didn't feel like any other day. No one could quite explain why. But every glance, every step seemed just a little heavier, as if the store had quietly weathered a storm and was still echoing its aftermath. The employees, once silent, now whispered more freely. Everyone knew something big had happened, but no one dared to believe it completely. Michael Bennett walked into the store looking nothing like he had on his first day. No more faded jacket, no baseball cap pulled low. Today he wore a suit, crisp white shirt buttoned neatly, and a CEO nameplate gleaming on his left chest. He no longer needed to hide. He wasn't observing anymore. He was acting. Some employees froze when they saw him. A few blinked, trying to confirm if what they saw was real. Others stepped back, wondering whether they'd be swept up in the purge everyone could sense approaching. Michael didn't greet anyone. He walked straight to the customer service desk, where Brian Keller stood, clipboard in one hand, sipping coffee as he checked the work schedule like everything was still under control. He looked up as Michael approached, visibly startled. Good morning, Brian stammered. I didn't expect you to. Michael cut him off. I need the office keys. Brian frowned. Excuse me? Michael pulled the CEO nameplate from his jacket pocket and held it up. The entire service desk area froze. A few customers in line turned their heads. Some employees peeked out from behind counters, as if watching a scene unfold on screen. I'm Michael Bennett, he said, voice steady but unmistakably clear. I own this store and I've heard everything I know about Linda. I know how you've manipulated employee schedules. I know you've used policy as a weapon. And I know the only reason this store's profit has increased is because you slashed staffing, cut benefits, and ignored your team's emotional well-being. Brian's face went pale. His hand tightened around the coffee cup. This is a misunderstanding. I did what I had to for efficiency. I don't know who told you what, but no one had to tell me, Michael cut in again, eyes cold as steel. I've been here all week. I saw you scold staff in front of customers. I heard Linda crying in the break room. I saw the schedule you used like a chessboard. I don't need excuses. I need the keys. Brian stood still, eyes darting as if searching for an escape. You're making a huge mistake, he muttered. The staff here are lazy. They're entitled. They want to be coddled, not to work. If you fire me, they'll run this store into the ground. Michael stepped closer, his voice dropping. No, they are the reason this store hasn't collapsed. Despite you. You are the burden. Silence fell. Then Brian slowly pulled the keys from his pocket and tossed them on the desk. You'll regret this, he hissed. You just handed power to a bunch of weaklings. Michael picked up the keys, met his eyes. No, he replied. I just returned power to the people who've earned it. Brian stormed out. The glass door slammed shut behind him, a sharp echo like the sound of an old system shattering. Michael turned around, surveying the room. Every employee was still. Linda stood at register 4, her eyes wide with shock and emotion. Jamal held a half-packed box, mouth agape. Alicia stood frozen in the aisle, her arms limp at her sides. Michael walked to the center of the store and raised a hand to gather them. From this moment on, he began, no one will be threatened. No one will be disrespected because of their personal circumstances. Anyone who loses hours unfairly will be compensated. Scheduling will be transparent. And any manipulation, whether from managers or coworkers, will be dealt with immediately. No one spoke, but fists were clenched, eyes began to glisten. Michael turned his gaze to Linda. I need a new leader here, someone who understands the staff, who knows how to keep a team together, and who has the courage to face injustice. I don't have to look far. Linda Shaw, if you're willing, I'd like to offer you the role of assistant manager. Linda didn't move. She seemed unable to believe what she'd heard. Around her, others began to clap. First Jamal, then Alicia, then the rest of the morning crew. Customers nearby smiled. Some nodded as though witnessing something finally made right. Linda slowly stepped forward, her voice unsteady. I, I'm just a cashier. I never thought you kept this store's spirit alive when no one else did, Michael interrupted. I'm not giving you a title. I'm naming what you've already been. Linda lowered her head. When she looked up again, her smile was no longer forced. It was real, proud. Not the smile of someone chosen, but of someone restored. Michael turned to the group, voice firm. We're starting over. This store doesn't just sell goods. It serves a community. And that community begins with the people inside it. Applause broke out. Louder this time, more resolute. A few people embraced. There were soft sobs, but no one was ashamed. These tears had a name. Hope. Michael stepped back, standing between the shelves. He looked around. The collapsed shelf from his first day was now upright. The superhero sticker still sat in the drawer at register 2. Small details, once insignificant, now carry the weight of a new beginning. And he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the first page turned. The small office where Brian once sat now felt eerily empty. The fake clatter of keyboard strokes was gone, as was the scent of pre-brewed coffee meant to mimic busyness. Linda stepped in, still holding the old shift schedule Michael had just handed her. She looked around, not with the eyes of someone newly promoted, but with the gaze of someone handed a responsibility wrapped in 2 quiet words: trust. The desk still held remnants of Brian's presence. A half-empty coffee cup, now dried to a ring of foam. A stack of sticky notes scrawled with soulless reminders. Cut Greg's hours. Linda, monitor attitude. Reduce Alicia's shifts next week. Linda picked up one, flipped it over, and exhaled. On the back was a staff evaluation system that could not have been more detached. Efficiency, 70%. Obedience, 30%. Total keep. She tossed the notes into the trash. Sitting down, Linda opened the computer. The scheduling system popped up on screen. Time slots overlapping. Employee names jumbled like chess pieces moved by an absent player. Morning shifts for parents were pushed to late evenings. Late night slots for students had been crammed into early mornings. No annotations, no explanations, just cold decisions from a power that never had to answer for itself. Quietly, she took out a fresh notebook and opened to the first page. In neat but firm black ink, she wrote, "We deserve to be understood." Beneath it, she added, "Review all shifts for this week. Meet each employee to hear personal situations. Prioritize stable hours for parents and students. Create a support group for overlapping shift conflicts." A knock. The door cracked open. Jamal peeked in, scratching his tousled curls. "Hey, Linda, assistant manager. Should I call you that now?" Linda smiled. "Just call me what you always did. Just don't call me boss." Jamal let out a breath. "That's a relief. Hey, if you need anything, I'm here. I'm really happy, you know. It's the first time I've seen someone promoted." And everyone clapped for real. Linda tilted her head. "Thank you, but I can't do this without people like you." Jamal hesitated, then stepped closer and placed a sheet on her desk. "Take a look. Last week's schedule overlapped. Greg had 3 closing shifts back-to-back, no one to rotate in. He fell asleep in the stockroom yesterday." Linda glanced down. Jamal was right. She nodded, her voice low. "Thank you. I'll call Greg in. And you? Are you doing okay?" Jamal shrugged, but his eyes darkened briefly. "I'm managing, but honestly, I was thinking of quitting. A few weeks ago, I felt invisible. No matter how hard I tried, no one noticed." Linda placed a hand on his and gave it a gentle squeeze. "I know that feeling, but you're not invisible. Starting today, I want you to help new hires settle in. You've got the kind of energy they need." Jamal's eyes lit up. "Really?" Linda nodded. "I saw you helping that girl at Register 3 yesterday." "You didn't know I was watching." Jamal flushed. "She looked nervous, that's all. I just wanted to help." "That's all it takes," Linda said. "So, will you take the new role?" Jamal straightened, chest slightly puffed. "I'm in." After he left, Linda turned back to her screen. She began sending internal messages to each staff member. A simple, clear note. If you need shift adjustments due to family or school commitments, please see Linda directly. Every request will be reviewed fairly. Within minutes, replies came in. Greg, thank you. I thought nobody noticed. Alicia, I have a first grader. I'd like to request Tuesdays off from night shifts. Nina, I'm new and didn't know who to ask about shift swaps. Can you help? Linda smiled. Her chest felt lighter. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. That afternoon, Linda held a small meeting with the night shift team. In the tight space of the storeroom, she stood among them. No podium, no flashy slides, just a whiteboard and a few plastic chairs. We've endured more than we should have, she began. But that doesn't mean we have to keep enduring it. I won't promise to fix everything in a day, but I promise this, I'll listen. And I'll be here, not to command, but to stand with you. Some nodded. Some were still cautious, but no one left before the meeting ended. As she packed away the whiteboard, she found a slip of paper someone had left behind. Thank you for being brave enough to change the air in this place. Late that night, she sat alone in the office, most lights off. Outside was the dark emptiness of the parking lot. She looked into the mirror, still the same Linda who had lived through exhausting days, but now with a new light in her eyes. A flicker of something even she hadn't realized she'd lost. She whispered to her reflection, "We're not done yet." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Morning sunlight streamed through the storefront glass, casting a warm golden hue across the shelves, warmer than it had ever felt before. Inside Grayson's market, the rhythm remained busy as always, carts rolling across the floor, barcode scanners beeping steadily. But something had shifted. A quiet transformation was taking root, unmistakable to those who knew where to look. Linda stepped out of the office in her freshly ironed uniform, hair neatly tied in a high ponytail. She was no longer the woman who smiled stiffly at customers, avoiding eye contact with her manager. Now she walked with a straight back, observant eyes, and a smile warm enough to soften a cold winter morning. In her hands, she carried a small box, something she'd prepared the night before, a collection of cartoon stickers, each featuring superheroes, animals, or quirky hearts. Not for sale, but to give away. At register 4, a young mother struggled with her 3-year-old son, who was crying over not getting a snack, tears streaming down his cheeks. The cashier looked flustered, unsure what to do. Linda approached, crouching to the child's eye level, and held out a dinosaur sticker. "This one's for our little superhero," she said gently. The boy quieted instantly, eyes wide, reaching for the sticker. The mother let out a relieved sigh and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not many people notice the little things." Linda nodded, saying nothing more. But as she turned, her eyes caught Jamal nearby. He was patiently guiding a new employee, Nina, on how to enter promo codes. His tone was calm and clear. Nina looked at him like she'd found an older brother. Linda walked over and gently tapped Jamal on the shoulder. "You're doing a great job." Jamal blinked. "What?" "The way you're guiding the new hire. I saw it. Clear, kind, and respectful." Jamal chuckled shyly. "I just didn't want them to feel as lost as I did when I started." Linda nodded, then pulled a small card from her pocket and handed it to him. "I want you to officially take on the role of peer mentor. Every new hire from this week on will be paired with you for their first 3 days." Jamal's eyes lit up. "Me? Really? You've earned it, and I need someone like you to help spread the kind of work culture we're trying to build." He gripped the card tightly, his lips pressed together as if trying to hold something in. Then he murmured like a vow, "I won't let you down." In the stockroom, Greg was neatly restocking boxes. Today, he didn't look sleep-deprived like usual. Linda had adjusted his shifts, so he no longer worked 3 consecutive closings. As she stepped in, Greg turned around, a bit unsure. "Do you, need something, ma'am?" Linda shook her head. "No, just wanted to ask, how are you feeling today?" Greg looked surprised. "Are you really asking?" "Yes, I don't just want to fix the schedule. I want to know if it actually helped." Greg was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, last night I made it home in time for dinner with my mom. First time in a long time. Linda smiled, said nothing else, then turned to leave, but paused. Oh, we're expecting a rush today. If you're free, could you lend a hand in the dry goods? Greg nodded immediately. You can count on me. Back in the office, Linda opened the internal inbox. The first message was from Nina. Hi, Linda. I know I've only been here 3 days, but I wanted to say thank you for making me feel seen. The second was from Alicia. Thanks to you, I picked up my son on time this week. He asked, did you change jobs, Mom? I just smiled, but inside I wanted to say no. Same job, new people. Linda sank into her chair, eyes stinging not from pressure, but because, for the first time in many months, she felt what she did was making a difference. By the end of the day, when the store quieted down, Linda made a slow round. She wasn't checking like Brian used to, no surveillance, no micromanaging. She simply watched and listened. An elderly customer at Register 3 chatted happily with the cashier. In the frozen section, Jamal and Nina laughed over a silly promo code mistake they both made. Greg helped a little girl lift a bag of rice from a low shelf. No one looked afraid. No one lowered their eyes. This was the store Linda had once dreamed of. Not just a place to earn a paycheck, but a place where people didn't have to leave their dignity at the door. And it was taking shape, built from kindness. The kind that might seem small, but when passed on with intention, becomes the foundation for an entirely new culture. Before leaving, Linda wrote a single line on the staff message board. Kindness doesn't make us weak. It makes us strong in ways no one can take away. The automatic glass doors let out a soft chime as they slid open. Michael Bennett stepped into Grayson's market like a stranger. No one noticed him at first. Just like the very first time, he walked quietly through the aisles, unassuming, drawing no attention. But this time was different. He wasn't hiding who he was, and he wasn't here to find what was wrong. He had returned to witness the result of a change he had once set in motion. The shelves were tidy, the aisles clean, price tags clear and precise, nothing extraordinary to a casual observer. But Michael didn't look with his eyes, he felt. And today, the store pulsed with a new rhythm, lighter, warmer, filled with more soft laughter and fewer weary sighs. Down the dry goods aisle, he saw Jamal helping an elderly customer choose rice. He leaned in, explaining the difference between long-grain varieties with sincere attention. The customer nodded, gently patted his shoulder as she left. At the checkout, Greg rang up items while chatting easily with a customer. No more hunched shoulders from exhaustion or stiff politeness out of fear. Next to him stood Nina, taking notes as she learned the ropes, occasionally whispering questions and always receiving patient answers. Michael walked quietly to Register 4, the one that used to be Linda's trenches. She was there now, but she no longer avoided eye contact. She knelt beside a little girl clinging to her mother's shopping cart. From her pocket, Linda pulled out a sticker shaped like a graduation cap-wearing owl and offered it. This is for standing so nicely while your mom shopped, Linda said, her voice like a little celebration. The girl beamed, clutching the sticker like a treasure. Her mother looked at Linda with gratitude. You should teach a class on public gentleness for adults. Linda laughed. Might take a lot of practice to get there. Just then, Linda looked up and met Michael's gaze. They held the moment silently. Then Michael walked over, stopping beside her register. You've done well, he said softly, just enough for her to hear. Linda gave a small nod. I just did what needed to be done. Michael smiled. You did more than that. You brought back something this whole system had forgotten. She was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, eyes still on the screen in front of her. You know, I almost quit, had the resignation typed out, saved as a draft. All it needed was one click. Michael didn't interrupt. I thought I had nothing left to give, she continued, but I couldn't go through with it. I didn't want Brian to win. I didn't want silence to be the ending. Michael rested his hand on the counter, not like a CEO, but like someone who had once stood on the edge between belief and doubt. I'm glad you stayed, he said. This store, these people, they need you. And I think you need them too. Linda nodded slowly. Not dramatically, but with clarity. I used to think I was just a number on the schedule, she said. Now I know I'm the one who writes it. Michael stepped away without another word. He trusted Linda enough not to stand by her side. He trusted that she would lead, not by command, but by belief. The only force that could ever truly transform a place from its core. Before leaving, he passed by the staff bulletin board. A new paper had been pinned there beneath Linda's signature, printed in bold. If you feel like no one is listening, knock on my door. If I don't answer, knock again. Michael chuckled quietly. It wasn't a slogan, it was a promise. From someone who had once knocked many times, and only after becoming the one holding the key, finally learned how to open the door for someone else. The automatic doors closed behind him. Michael stepped outside into the golden glow of the late afternoon sun. Across the street, a customer had just parked, a mother holding her young son's hand. They looked up at the store sign before walking in, their faces lit as if this place was already a familiar part of their life. Michael didn't look back. He didn't need to, because he knew this store had truly come back to life.